Ah. Well, I thought it was time to talk about the album It Should Be You, this one here. This was produced back in 2018 and can't quite believe where the time's gone. Because quite a lot happened in 2018, beginning of something, I suppose, especially the videos and the top hat, of course. But it wasn't all about this, and the videos that came from the album only materialised because of the images that were created in my mind from some of the tracks. And I will go through within this video perhaps a video that was going to happen that may have shunted the other videos to one side. So we will begin, and I will continue wearing the top hat throughout this conversation. Why not? So Underground is the first track on this album, and it was a nice sort of continuation of the last album, which was Destiny. So it had the sound, and I know jokingly some people may think a lot of my music sounds similar or the same or whatever, but to my ears I hear something slightly different. And Destiny is all finished, and Underground was a nice track to move over to the next album from my perspective. It has a very similar sounding, it had very similar sounding to the Destiny album where that left off, but this album I suppose I already knew was going to move in a different direction. And subsequently it was also the sequel, Pink Dolphin label album, and of course it was associated with the letters, letters to the vowel, with vowel letters, whereas I had my previous album, It Should Be You. Sorry, it should be. I'm rambling. I don't know what I'm talking about. No, I do. If I only had eyes for you. No. You know what? Let me just scroll. I've got such a body of work, I can't even remember what I'm producing or what I'm talking about sometimes. I only have eyes for you, correct. So, yeah, I suppose I've got I and you in that one. And as a result, I wanted to have another album that started with a letter. And in this case, it was You. And also, going off subject slightly, when you're trying to track down words that fit tracks with specific letters, you start realizing you're actually very constricted. You haven't quite got the amount of words, perhaps, to describe some of the sounds that you've kind of got in your head. Anyway, I've spoken about Underground, and as I say, that purely was a track, as far as I remember, that had to come from Destiny and bring us into this album. I'm quickly having a skeg at the other tracks. I really, after 7 years, I can't remember what order they originally would have been in. And I'm sure I've spoken in the past that when the music's coming along, it fits into a vague position as the album progresses, but it's not entirely until the album is completely finished that I'll know specifically where the tracks should go in order and how it should work. And to refresh my memory on the whole album, actually, I had to listen to this album yesterday for the first time in approximately six and a half years. So it was quite refreshing, and tracks that I was thinking were good paling into significance with others that I at the time didn't think were so good, but actually turned out to be quite chill. So all in all, this particular album isn't the dark album I really thought it would be or could have been. It's got some dark tracks, and of course them videos I alluded to earlier kind of give a premise that this album was a dark album, but it's not. It's actually quite light and fluffy in places. And the track Ultraviolet, as an example, which is the second track, it's just a very refreshing, uplifting type sound. I don't really know what I was striving for. I think it was a kind of mixture. It was kind of looking back at a lot of my work, um, but trying to be different, just as the album I just described with the eyes, as an example. Um, that had to be something special and it had to be something different. Um, Predominantly, it needed to be electronic for sure, although all my music is, but it just seemed to have more of an emphasis that it should be. Um, in fact, I think as time, if I'm correct in saying, I do believe this was less angry sounding on the whole than the Destiny album. So I was kind of, you start to realize that you're starting to have amalgamations of ideas and thoughts on the whole collective. And these particular projects were quite interesting because they weren't going to be, albeit it was a concept album, it wasn't going to be an album that had to adhere to strictly being a dark album or a light album or electronic album. It had some sort of freedom, if that kind of makes any sense. And a track I really, really liked back in the day, I still like the tail end of this and always gloried in the fact I'd managed to achieve this particular sound. But it's the track Universal, the third track on the album. Kind of a track with empathy for sure. And I do like them, and sometimes I just stumble into them. And I was dabbling with some techniques to kind of create that sound. They eventually materialized at the latter end of that track. And I had to play a couple of times yesterday to actually think, is this the track I thought it was? It also, from memory, it wasn't originally called that either. It had a different title, but I cannot remember. Now, so I'm staying on track, and because I was discussing the videos earlier, the track UFO, which is the fourth track, was actually going to be, potentially, the one and only video I was going to shoot from this album. Because I have sort of ideas of Captain Kirk or whatever standing on his spaceship, but inside a UFO rather than, I don't know, a human spaceship. You know, I know I'm detracting, but I do think it has an excellent sound. I think it really sort of, the sound, the track completely emanates the sound of a UFO for sure. And yeah, I had these images conjuring up in my mind. But when I went to Nikolai to talk about the 2 or 3 tracks I had in mind for the video, and I mentioned UFO specifically, he deterred me from that because he actually had a project where he was actually going to be shooting something like a UFO sci-fi type video for somebody else. So you can potentially say, or we can all say, that it was quite interesting that we didn't go for UFO and it was umbilical that was chosen instead. I'll come round to talking about that a bit later. The chat we had when we were, I don't know, brainstorming, I think that's the right word, when our heads together to come up with the idea of the video. But that doesn't appear quite yet. In fact, the next track is called Unhinged. And again, excuse me for my sense of humour, but you know, these words are popular in my vocabulary. So now and again you will hear a track or see a track or a named track that will have something linked to this. Again, whether the track name came before the sound, I'm not sure. Though I did make a little video on this after, I believe, my umbilical and Undertaker video, where I was in the kitchen just outside there, and my daughter kindly helped me with that video, and it was rather amusing and kind of strange, and it highlighted a section of the piece of music which for whatever reason, specifically mine, I love. One tidbit, I am in the process and have been in the process for the last year or two, selecting tracks which I believe will go on what I'd classify as my greatest hits as such over the 10 years, and it's going to be called The Greatest Distraction, of course. And there's an accumulation of music that is going there. There's been reworks, etc. I'll obviously talk about that in the future. But after hearing Unhinged yesterday, I thought that needs to be reworked. That needs to be revisited and updated. And I'm sure that will appear on that particular album, which will be, hopefully, coming out next year. Because I'm running out of ideas and project ideas and so on. And I feel a 10-year anniversary of the music is, I don't know, it's the right thing to do. But no, it's a meandering track, Unhinged, and it starts off and goes wherever it's going. And this is what I love about the music sometimes, because that's how it happens. And then you stumble across something and it just explodes. And that latter minute, 2 minutes maybe, of the track is just sublime, in my opinion. I was asked by a friend if I could do a new version just for him, for a little ditto he was doing, a video or something. And that version is, I'm just looking at the screen, 1 minute 16 seconds, and it's called the Klaxon Mix, and I think he used it for a video. And I'm not surprised, because it did have a unique sound. Now, here we go. So we've finally come up to the halfway mark, and the original version of Umbilical appears on the album. Now, when I say the original version, due to the video, the music had to be changed because of a particular part that I thought would be great if we could just stop the video for a few moments, just so we had a little bit of quietness where we have rebuild. But ultimately, Nick was quite right. We also needed the music to be adapted and changed for the video sequence anyhow. I think it had to be a little smaller. Yeah, the original version is 7 minutes 7 seconds, and my video mix is 5 minutes 23. So there you go. But again, when you rework some music, sometimes you can actually make it appear to be better than it was in the first place. So I'm not adverse to doing that on occasions. It's just that sometimes the projects are done, they're finished, and you move on. And the bodies of work, of course, stay there. And there are times you'll listen to tracks and think, oh, I could have so much better than that, and I could have done this, and I could have done that. But it is what it is. And the only way I'm going to deal with that is the way I'm dealing with it, with the idea, as I mentioned earlier, about the greatest distraction next year. There's already 2 tracks that are perfection now. I'm not going to explain what tracks they are, but they feel perfect, in my opinion. The right way of produce. I think actually maybe 3 tracks. But yeah, I'm really happy with the sounds, and I think people who like my music, and specifically them tracks, are going to love this. But you got to wait. Sorry, I'm not going to give anything away. That's all about what's coming next year. Really happy ultimately with Umbilical. And the reason why it was actually called Umbilical and not Umbilical Cord was because these words in the U selection had to be one words, and I just joined it. Makes it a bit unique as well at the same time. This is bad, but the track Unconscious, which comes and follows next, is much more relaxed, chilled piece of music again, and I suppose it would be. Sometimes, I've probably mentioned it before, there's tracks that seem to be fillers. I'm not sure why on an album I wasn't sure how many tracks it was going to have. I mean, as time goes by, I've managed to produce albums that don't have to have so many tracks. I'm not sure if it's conscious or subconscious, the reason why I produce so many or so little. I'm not sure. There's always a feeling. Sometimes it just feels the project isn't finished quite yet. But if I've actually gone to the trouble and process of actually making a track for the album already, and it sits up there with most of the music, then I don't feel it'd be right to just can it and just put it to one side. I feel like it should have its own life and it should be allowed to continue staying with the project. But potentially the track Unconscious could have been dropped, I suppose. When it comes to the track Uprising, I'm not going to spill the beans on this one, but I do like the way I adapted this music to the track name. I did have the track name first, and I was looking forward to creating this track. But the really interesting thing was, it didn't follow my usual remit. It was much more, it grows, don't get me wrong, but it hasn't got the same sort of beats or the background bass. And I wonder if that ever took people by surprise, expecting a track that would be menacing, dark, but it's suggestive. It's still suggestive of being an uprising, but just in a different kind of way. I don't know. Now, urbanization, that actually, listening to ESA was very refreshing because it sort of just washed over me, made me feel like I was in I don't know, just in suburban type region. I don't know. It just felt pleasant. Felt like I was with humanity to some extent, and I think that's what it was all about in the first place. And it did really go out of my safety net in a sense, because I moved in a direction I'd once done before, when I was trying to be much more rigid and creating music, I don't know, more directly. I don't know if that's the right word. But it goes back to my very first album with the track Brainwreck. So it's all followed the same principle. And why I embarked on that, I can't remember, to be quite honest with you. But it just felt right. And I think what it turned out to be very right for the album. And it deserves to be there for sure. I'm smiling because a nod to The Undertaker comes next. And yeah, it's the track is what it is. And I think it's really odd. I probably never said this on video before. But when I listened to both Undertaker and Umbilicaled, the videos that have been produced and are out there, everything that was mentally conceived in my head before the videos were made, these videos are the exact images I had in my mind before the videos came to life. And to get that so right and so perfect is quite incredulous. Nikolai, he did something quite wonderful in this video actually. I mean, it was in part, I'd wanted to use drone footage, and subsequently a new person was on board helping with the filming, with the drone filming. And Nikolai had no clue whatsoever about this. It was all new technology at the time. And he was obviously interested, but it was kind of like, it was all on the spur of the moment. You know, he'd never met this man before. And I think he's used to his type of filming. I had ideas in my head. The guy who was doing the drone, he knew what he was doing, but he just needed to take direction. All very wonderful stuff. Everyone turned up and had a really enjoyable day. Temperatures were in close to the 30s, and there I am with this top hat, them teeth, and my cloak, sweating buckets. But the thing Nikolai did, which I do like for sure, is that moment where he sort of replicated the thing in Umbilicaled. He didn't tell me he was going to do this, of course, but where the video stops and music stops, just for a few brief seconds and then starts all over again. And I thought that was kind of a nice touch for sure. But the music, yeah, it's very dark. It's very aggressive. It just it is what it is. Uber, nothing to do with the Uber taxis. Nothing to do with Germany either. Just Uber for whatever reason. It's but we go back into the realm of yet another track that's just fairly simple, fairly basic, and just another refreshing, mellowish type of track. As is Utopian. I feel in some ways that we do for sure have 3-4 tracks that are just floating around on this album without any sort of relationship in music wise to the main core of the album, but just because of their titles, because of the U. And again, that comes back to my own amusement, I'm afraid. And also because I feel that if these tracks have been, I've spent time working on these tracks, they should obviously exist and remain. So I've gone through the process of telling you about the videos and the album. For those who aren't aware, when I released the Undertaker single, as such, I decided to do 2 or 3 extra tracks actually, and they're staring me in the face, hence me gazing up above the camera. They're called Grave Digging, Final Nail in the Coffin, and a twisted mix of the Undertaker. That's quite an interesting one actually, the Undertaker twisted mix. I think I just, twisted it around a little and did some things to make it sound like a totally different type of instrumental. And Grave Digging and Final Nail in the Coffin, I think, are just nice associates to the original Undertaker track, giving it more depth, if that makes any sense. And you may note that a year or 2 later, the Undertaker, he wasn't gone. He did appear in another video for a future album, as did the character in Umbilical, my bearded, strange character bottling up people. He appeared in the woods and all sorts, very abstract videos. But we will talk about that on another occasion when I'm talking about the albums that they came from. But for now, hopefully, this gives you an insight into what I can remember of producing the album It Should Be You in 2018. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye-bye.